Good day to you all. I see some of you are at home, some of you are in the woods, some of you are in your car. It's so wonderful that we can gather this night. Um, One of our special friends is offering his teaching, Brett Cook. We're going to begin with a short meditation, and I'm coming to you from Bloomington, Indiana, home of the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, Shawnee, and Joan Watts, my friend Joan's home. And so we're so delighted to be together, to sit together, to share together, to celebrate Black History Month. So let's start with settling in, get comfortable wherever you are, kind of find your sits bone. This will be short, just to drop in and to welcome yourself just as you are. And seeing of each breath, you can just relax even more. And then notice what you notice with your heart. Check in with your heart and how are we doing today? Being ever so kind. Aware of the earth and the land ancestors beneath your feet. And the support of our ancestors, both blood and spirit. Just notice what you notice as you connect with the earth and your ancestors. I'm very aware of my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, on this day, and of course, Larry Ward and Audre Watts. And just tuning in for a second to see if you feel safe in this moment. If you need to orient yourself by soft eyes, just looking all around you. Knowing we're going to create a island of sanity together. And breathing in, know that you are breathing in. Breathing out, know that you are breathing out. Breathing in, becoming aware of your whole body, right here, right now. And breathing out, relaxing your whole body. And Matt, if you could invite 3 sounds of the bell. Gently coming back and giving yourself a stretch. Hopefully that's a little bit of refreshment as we begin our evening. On behalf of the Lotus Institute, I want to thank you for coming together as part of our Black History Month. We're delighted to have our friend Brett Cook. Brett is on our faculty for Anamkara and has been a good friend of Larry and mine for 20 years. Yeah, I think 20 years. He's nodding his head, 20 years. I took a few notes. It's so interesting introducing a friend because you don't know what to say except you love him a lot. And Brett describes himself as an interdisciplinary artist, educator, and cultural strategist. I love that. I think of some of the big community and public projects that Brett's done in Harlem, in San Francisco, in other parts of the globe. His focus is collective liberation, which is one of the reasons we are such a fit with him. And we love his wife and kids. Brett really enjoys being a dad. So I really want to welcome Brett. You want to add anything? I never do much with education, but he's an amazing guy. That's his artwork behind him. And his artwork was on the flyer. If you saw the flyer with Brett's amazing artistry. I think that's one of the things that fascinates me with Brett is that he does these community art projects, and whether it's kids or neighborhoods that he engages, or was it Richmond, Virginia? Did you have a project there?
Duke, North Carolina.
Duke. That's what I'm thinking of. Duke. Yeah. Yeah, where he engages whole communities in creating art together. So please welcome Brett. Thank you for being here, Brett.
Greetings all. Dear teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, dear sister Chong Kong, dear noble family, um, dear Carter G. Woodson, welcome on this day of February, or yes, February 18th, on Black History Month. Happy Black History Month. In my tradition, usually we kind of acknowledge Thai and Sister Chung Kong, but I don't know if you know why I put Carter G. Woodson. There's a drawing of him behind me. I bring him up because he's the father of Black history. And so he's the second person to get a PhD from Harvard, Black person, after W.B. Du Bois. He got 2 undergraduate degrees, went to the University of Chicago, got a master's, went to Harvard. And then at Harvard, he had a professor that told him, there is no Black history. Like, it doesn't exist. And so motivated by that, he wrote this first book, The Education of the Negro Prior to 1861, just as an effort to, not as a rebellion against him, but really to kind of address the lack of knowledge that Black history existed. And then in 1926, he decided to kind of make this booklet and had it kind of associated with Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And he started this 2-week thing, Negro History Month. And it started getting traction with churches and schools. And it kind of became a thing that in Black communities, they started having parades. And it wasn't to highlight Negro history, but highlight the Negro in history. And so then he wrote a second book, which he's more known for, The Miseducation of the Negro in 1933. So if you know um, Lauryn Hill's album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, that's actually a riff of this kind of seminal book. And, his thing was that at that time it was kind of a response to the absence of Black education. Like Blacks at that time, it was all about making them be laborers, not intellectuals. Um, and so he did this and started this traction and started acting all this organizing through churches, and he started a pamphlet, and so eventually he passes away. And then in 1977, Gerald Ford recognizes Black History Month. So that's how we got Black History Month. And to me, that is karma. That really is karma. Karma is action. It's action in the form of thinking. It's an action in the forms of the things that we do. And so it never really goes away. It's something that we do something, and then over time it continues. And so I just wanted to shout out Carter G. Woodson, because now 102 years later, from that gesture, from his action, the conditions have arisen for me to be here with you. Such extraordinary thing. And so it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I always think of that, your dogma ran over my karma, like bumper sticker. There's this connotation that karma is always bad. And I think part of the exercise is to recognize that it can be good. That if we do loving kindness, like that continues on, or if we practice understanding or compassion, or if we say something that inspires confidence, like all those actions water the seeds of other actions in ourselves and in other people. And so making people like not suffer, like that's a wonderful karma. And so I heard someone say that really basically all the Buddhist stories are just him producing good karma, like his whole life. It's building the conditions for other people to experience good things. And so it's like karma can be reborn, and reborn as this positive thing. And so it makes me think of, I'm going to talk a lot about Black history. I was telling Peggy before the talk, like if it's going to be a Black History Month, there should just be a lot of Black karma in the talk. And so it makes me think of, in 1968 in Harlem, New York, there were these people that recognized like there really wasn't an art field for a lot of the nexus of the Black diaspora. And so these people got together and decided to make this museum on the top of a liquor store in Harlem called the Studio Museum of Harlem. And it was to champion kind of artists of African descent and just kind of make a space for creative expression for them. And what they decided is they were going to have this program where they would take a young artist every year, maybe 2, maybe 3, and give them exposure to the culture and give them an exhibition. And it started first over this liquor store, and then it grew to another space, and then it grew to a bigger space. And then eventually in 1997, I got to go there. I got to be there in residence. I was one of 3 artists. So I moved. So from the West Coast, grew up on the West Coast. I was in Harlem, in this esteemed place. And when I was there, I made this incredible exhibition. It was all about people from Harlem, and worked with kids from a parochial school, a Catholic school that was in Harlem, and people from a nursing home, and people that lived in Harlem, one of the first like early Jamaican vegetarian famous places, Strictly Roots, and did all these kind of drawings and paintings and photographs and films about how they represented themselves in Harlem. But of all those 15 people, none of them had ever been in the museum before. At that time, like so many museums, they still were kind of elitist places. Now they have Target Fridays or Free Thursdays, or, as museums are trying to make things more accessible, they're trying to find ways for audiences to be engaged. But back then, it was really separate. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do 7 more paintings of these people and put them outside where they live. So Matt, I'm going to ask you to play the video now, please. First one.
This is about making everyday people heroes and giving them gifts. And the people who are like them, who are heroes, giving them all gifts to. Let them all see likenesses of themselves in beautiful, kind of empowered ways. Loving ways. Human kind of ways.
What do you think about it? What do you think about when you see that piece?
When I think about it,
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful, man. I think it's a beautiful black picture. You know, it stands out in Harlem, man. But it looks like Bill Cosby, man. Serious.
Oh, really?
Right? Don't that look like Bill Cosby? Yeah. But I think that's who is it anyway? Who is it?
It's a brother from around the way, man.
What's his name? What's his name?
I don't even know his name. That's the artist up there.
Oh, he drew that picture?
Yeah.
Oh, man, my man, fantastic,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, he's good.
Wait a minute, come on now. I know you
Go
can't,
ask
man.
him, go ask
Wait
him.
a minute. Yo, you drew this picture right here? You drew this? Man, you great, man. Thanks, brother. But let me tell you something. I was telling him, that picture was like Bill Cosby, man.
Yeah, that's how he's asking. Was that Bill Cosby?
See what I'm saying?
That's a regular person from around here.
That's something. You good?
So that was one of 7 paintings, and they all had quotes. And so in the Western tradition of portraiture, the model doesn't have a voice. So when you see Gauguin paint those naked ladies in Polynesia, or you see Andre Serrano take pictures of someone in contemporary art, it's through the traditional filter of the artist that you hear about the person. And so what I was doing is I was showing these people from Harlem, from their neighborhoods, putting these pieces on these abandoned buildings of them, talking about things they cared about, things they loved. Life is beautiful, or I love people. And it was so extraordinary. Like you could see, they're like, is that Bill Cosby? Like, this can't just be a regular person. Like, why would they just put a regular person up in my neighborhood? I mean, even the Gap ads on 125th and Adam Clayton Powell still had a blonde lady in the clothing. And so the act of having people from that place talking about that place was really revolutionary. It was really just this transcendent act of karma. And really up to that day, it was one of the most powerful experiences I'd had as a professional, because we put them up in the middle of the day, even though it's no funding, no permission. I mean, they're like, they must supposed to have permission because they're doing it in the middle of the day. Like, why would anyone else just put those things up for free outside? And people are honking and pulling over, talking to us. We go to one place, they start sweeping the sidewalk. And so I had a little meditation practice then. I wasn't really deeply kind of a student of the Dharma at this time. This is 97. But it really was this kind of lesson in karma, in action. Because here's this thing that I did, and I thought it was going to have an impact. And then all these things started happening. In that moment, there were all these consequences or results. And then after that, there were all these things that started happening. People wrote about it and put it in the newspaper. And then they used them on the front of a book about Harlem. And then, people knew that I was the guy that did that. And that guy in the video, I would see him. I lived in Harlem for 8 years. And after that, like, we had a relationship. Like, I'm the guy that puts those faces all over Harlem. Or the kids started calling me, that's the painter man. That's the painter man. And so it's really this kind of lived experience example that I wanted to share with you about, when we have action and they're done with kindness and empathy and love, they reverberate. And it's kind of also like I think of like a tree. Like if you have a house and it has like this one has a west-facing window, if it gets hot, like I can have a goal and say, okay, I'm going to plant this tree and maybe I want to just have it block the window so my room doesn't get so hot. But depending on the species of that tree, like it's not going to stop at the window. Like it's going to keep growing. It's going to grow over the roof and just keep going. And I think that's such a great kind of remembrance of how our actions work, how karma works. It means that past thoughts and actions have led to this moment, and also means that this moment is the birthplace of the next moment. It's how we think and what we do. And so one of the consequences was the Studio Museum eventually hired a new director, this amazing woman, Thelma Golden. And she takes over at the museum, and she had already had this esteemed kind of history at the Whitney Museum of Art, and done a bunch of seminal, really important exhibitions. And now at the Studio Museum, she's going to start this exhibition, Freestyle, which is going to be all young artists of color from the diaspora from all over. And maybe because of my karma, I get invited to submit a proposal to the exhibition. So, I'm ambitious. I'm starting to get seen. I'm in New York trying to make it, have another big show coming up downtown, starting to show stuff. So I get this idea, man, we should do this whole thing on gentrification because Harlem's starting to be gentrified. This is still Harlem when at the 59th Street, if you took the A subway train, everyone who wasn't African descent got off. Like Harlem was still a segregated, isolated borough. There was no Whole Foods. This is before the Magic Johnson Theater. This is it's Black New York. But those abandoned buildings where I'm putting up our paintings are starting to get bought and starting to get turned over. So I get this idea, like I'll do a project kind of like my project where I'll interview people and we can put it in the foyer and it'll have this social content to it. And then they don't really get back to me with my proposal. And, I'm ambitious and a little anxious and I don't think they're treating me right. And I'm thinking all about the habits I've had about museums and how they're disconnected from the community. And maybe this is too political for them. And, like that video, I ought to be 20 in your 20s. It's like, okay, they're just not radical enough. And so eventually it starts being a really long time. It's kind of like not very skillful. And then they let me know, okay, you're not going to be in the show. And so I don't totally remember what I felt like 25 years ago, but I kind of think I was disappointed. And I kind of think I felt like I wasn't worthy. But I also thought, you know what? This is so typical of a museum. They're so bougie. They don't want to make it accessible to the community. This is too radical for them. I'm going to write them a letter and tell them what they really should do. And so I sit down and write this letter. And there might have been things in it that were true. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, every answer is always partway right. If I look deep enough, I can see. Am I sure? Am I sure this is not true? Am I sure this is true? But now as a more seasoned practitioner, if someone sends me a letter that just like tells me how messed up I am, I might be empathetic, but that doesn't necessarily make me want to collaborate with them right away. And so over time, I've recognized this is where I needed mentorship. This was a good moment that I could have used some mentorship. But now when I think about it, it was karma. I end up taking this letter and like, hey, give this to Thelma. So here's this great director who's done all these great things, who's amassing this great exhibition. And here's my late 20s self having the audacity to go and just tell them how bad they are. And so it's kind of like, make sure I don't lose my note here. It's kind of like the Salatha Sutra. This is kind of that other kind of karma. The Salatha Sutra, I like to call it the two arrows. It's the story of where the Buddha's, he's with the bhikkhus and he's like, the uninstructed worldling, when they're contacted by a painful feeling, they sorrow and grieve and lament and he weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings. He feels the bodily feeling and a mental one. So it's kind of like if you stroke him with a dart, he would take another dart and shoot himself. But then he says, but bhikkhus, when the instructed noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He does not weep, beating his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, a bodily one, and not a mental one. So if they were going to strike him with a dart, he would not strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart. And so I hear this story in kind of mindfulness-based stress reduction, or more typically associated with emotions. But, it's this idea about karma, that sometimes the karma is something that we make in ourselves that's a response to our own suffering. And unfortunately, I didn't have the insight or the support or the reflection or the practice to pause, but I ended up causing myself more pain. Not just because Thelma was a gatekeeper, and afterwards, why would Thelma want to work with me? Who knows whether she was upset by that letter or not? I'll never know. But more just even in that gesture, I separated myself from the community that I'm critiquing is not connected to community. Like, those are my people. That's my family. Where else can I go to an ecology of a nexus of Black African diasporic artists and have that same relationship? And I end up cutting myself from them. So it's kind of like the first arrow is inevitable. That's part of being in samsara. It's part of suffering. But the second arrow is not inevitable. It's preventable. And so pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And I hope you remember that, or I hope I remember that by sharing that story with you. And so it kind of takes me back to Carter G. Woodson, thinking about hearing that from his professor at Harvard, and thinking about what kind of pain he must have felt. Like when I said that to you, when I was doing the reading and doing the research, like I was like, oh, what kind of pain that must have been to have a professor say that to you. It's really kind of an expression of oppression. And it kind of leads me to, I think one of the great instruments missing from American consciousness is like a working definition for racism. Racism's about power. Like if your professor says that to you at that time, like that's oppressive. It means that I can use my prejudices combined with social institutional power to create systems of advantage. I can oppress you just based on your race. It can involve policies or practices or cultural beliefs of disadvantaged people moving beyond just personal beliefs. So like racism is his professor saying that to him at Harvard, or, racism is where freeways in the 60s were built in the South Bronx or in Oakland or in Barrio Logan or in Durham through Black communities, like without their consent. Like that's racism. Or now I hear all these stories of people who get their houses praised, and they're undervalued, or they have to whitewash their houses so they can get appropriate values. Or even more explicitly, in the execution of Keith Porter Jr. and Renee Good, like that's a wake-up call that the news cycles and politicians, and I've seen posters online, like appropriately all these things are acknowledging this new fascist violence we have through ICE. But literally days before, Keith Porter was a Black citizen killed by ICE on December 31st. And like he's just forgotten. Like he's overlooked. Like people don't know his name. It's not in any of this. And so really racism is an expression of making a separate self. It protects the separation. But the thing about this is like prejudice now, that's universal. Like you don't have to have power to discriminate. Like I can discriminate because I'm vegan and you eat meat, Or I can discriminate because I like magnolias, you like lotuses. I can discriminate because I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican. I can discriminate because I'm Gen X and you're a boomer, or you're a millennial, or you're an alpha. So for you old people, this means 6'7". That's alpha language. If you're not up on that, I'm trying to give you lots of education in this talk. But basically what I'm saying is like discrimination is another kind of prejudice, judgment, that's like racism. That really something that we all can practice. And really the tool or the instrument that we need to kind of, the antidote per se, is kind of the insight of interbeing. That kind of helps by seeing our interbeing. It helps us kind of touch the ability to non-discriminate, to see that like actually I'm interrelated. And so my discrimination is somehow discrimination of myself. That actually like we're all made of all these different things. We're all made of multiple geographies. We're all made of multiple cultures. We're all made of multiple aesthetics, sensibilities, tastes, preferences. The way I always think the story, the way that I always remember is, the classic, if you look into a flower, like those flowers behind me, you can see it's made out of sun because it needed the sun to grow. And then if I look deeper into that flower, I know it's made out of dirt because if it didn't have dirt, it wouldn't grow. And then if I look deeper, I can see that it's made out of the farmer because the farmer had to take care of the flower so they could grow. And then if I look deeper, it's made out of bread. I always love when I say that when kids are always like, what? Bread? It's like, yeah, man, bread, because the farmer needed bread so he could take care of the flower so that the flower could grow. So pretty soon, it's like, okay, the flower, it's not made out of flour. Like the flower is made out of non-flour elements. And so the notion of us being separate or having a separate self and not seeing our interbeing is really what makes us suffer. And so when I think about ice and I think about, the desire to have a region speak a singular language and build fences and deport people, it's driven by all these people that are not even from this country. And their myth of a separate self is really what's making them suffer. It's really like that lack of kind of understanding that we are that kind of gives them terror. Matt, let's have a sound of the bell. So when I look deeply at fascism, racism, colonialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, all these are kind of efforts to reinforce kind of a sense of supremacy, like a separate other. And according to the Buddha, like there is no self. We're all interconnected that way. The right hand is not disconnected from the left hand. And so in their interrelatedness, they do not discriminate. And so this kind of suffering comes from a notion of being separate, and a resentment sometimes from that. It makes me think of another one of my other favorite stories from the Buddha. I always call it "No Presents, Please," and it's really the story of after Buddha's enlightenment, he's walking and a man comes up and who's angry, and he's like, "Oh, bro, who are you? You're nobody. You're not better than me. How do you think you're better than me? What do you think gives you the right to go teach people stuff? You're just a charlatan." And just says all this spiteful stuff to the Buddha. And so the Buddha's response is like, let me ask you a question. So if you buy a gift for someone and the person does not take it, who gets the gift? And so the guy's kind of surprised. Like, he's like, okay, that's a weird response. I was expecting something different, but okay. Well, I get to keep the gift. I bought it, so I guess I get to keep it. It's mine. And so the Buddha smiles and he's like, you're correct. If you buy the gift and I don't take it, you get to keep it. And the same thing is true with your anger. That if you try to give me your anger and I don't take it, it stays with you. So if you want to get rid of your anger, don't go be angry to someone else. If I want to get rid of my anger, I need to go help someone feel love. And then I'll feel love. And it's really like because of interconnectedness that works. And you can just see it in so many things, the way karma works that way, And I share this story in part because, we're in a diabolical time, as the kids say. We're in a time of so much hurtful language, harmful actions, mean things being said and shared. And so a part of this teaching has been helpful for me to not give the give back as a punishment, but to acknowledge there's some things I need to regulate. I don't need to accept. And at the same time, have this story be a reminder that, but if I do want the world to be more loving, then I have to respond and act with love. That actually through this suffering, I can understand that because someone else is suffering, then I need to be kind to transform, at the very least, that suffering in myself. And because of karma, there's going to be some action that's going to have some impact, that's going to continue in that same kind of kindness. And so, that man really just had a complex. And in Buddhism, we talk about the complexes: the inferiority complex, the superiority complex, and the equality complex. And so when I think of white supremacy and racism, that's a superiority complex. That's this belief that I'm better than you. I'm smarter than you, or more enlightened than you, or whatever. Some way that I'm going to prove that I'm superior. And I'm going to work hard. I'm going to find my happiness by being superior. And so I might be my nation's superior than you. My race is more superior than you. My military is more superior than you. And there's some kind of satisfaction I'm searching for creating through that. But in the spirit of karma, that's going to make other people suffer. In the same way that I'm giving out that violence, that anger, whoever's receiving that, they're going to feel suffering. And so they might be like, I'm not below you. I don't want to be below you. And so if you're going to bomb me, well, I'm just going to bomb you back. You can just bomb me. Well, I'm going to put bombs in a car, or I'm going to make a drone. Or if you steal all my people and don't give them back, then I'll go steal some of your people, not give them back. And so it starts to be these cycles of karma, of our actions, that really don't make us feel more safe. They make us feel more afraid. I look at it another more maybe close to home example, like your family. Think of that. What's that phrase? Happy wife, happy life. It's like, if my wife's not happy, I'm not happy. If the mother's not happy, is the daughter happy? Like, it's really those relationships I can see our interconnectedness, that if I want my child to be happy, I really want to water the seeds of happiness in him, support them, listen to them, be there for them. And then in the spirit of karma, that is going to reverberate. There's some way that then they learn to practice that same way of being. So that's superiority complex. There's also the inferiority complex. So here's another Black history moment. W.B. Du Bois, he's the first one to go to Harvard, get a PhD of African descent. You know, part of what he was famous for in his famous book, The Souls of Black Folk in 1903, was the double consciousness. And so for people who don't know, double consciousness is something he writes about all Black Americans have. That's this internal conflict that we always have to deal with, that we're both seeing the world through our own eyes as Black people, and at the same time, always carrying the fact that we're being seen in another way. Somehow being judged by our race. And we always have to live in this two-ness in a way that people of the dominant paradigm don't ever have to live. And so it makes this really unsettling kind of self that for a lot of people, it waters the seeds of inferiority in them. It's like that story of who's colder? The white man's ice is colder. So there's a story about there's a white man on the side of the road with a igloo filled with ice and a Black man on the side of the road with the igloo filled with ice. Who are you going to buy your ice from? And then the person says, well, I'm going to buy it from the white man because the white man's ass is colder. It's like we've internalized that inferiority so deeply that inadvertently we just buy into supremacy. So that's another kind of complex, to self-deprecate. And then there's the equality complex. We're like, I'm equal. We're going to be the equal. And the challenge with equal is it's still like I'm referring to another thing to define my selfness. I'm still like dependent on selfness to be a thing. You know, and true liberation is like being liberated from any sense of inferiority or superiority, because there really is no self. Trying to lose my space. You know, the Buddha, if we go back to the flower, like the Buddha told us we're made of non-human elements, animals, vegetables, and minerals. And that's why we got to remove the notion of man and human being. And the reality is, if I get really skillful at recognizing my interconnectedness to these other things, it's going to help me protect them. I'm going to be better able to protect animals. I'm going to be able to protect plants. I'm going to be better able to not abuse the environment, not pollute it. I'm going to be able to really see that I'm in a relationship. And it's really part of my own kind of source of liberation. Can I get another bell, Matt? So today is a very auspicious day. Today is the birthday of Audre Lorde. So Audre Lorde is a Black lesbian feminist warrior poet, known for her writing and activism, addressing race, gender, sexuality, class, advocating for social justice through themes of identity, intersectionality, and her works like Sister Outsider. Okay. Put that over there. Her legacy, she's from Harlem. So Black History Moment, we're keeping Harlem going in the talk today. She spent time at Hunter. The Women's Poetry Center at Hunter is named after her. She was a college student, endowed professor there. And even though upon her death, there was an obituary in the New York Times, she was eventually memorialized at St. John the Divine. The first, is this true? Yeah, first Black woman, first woman of color in its 100-year history, St. John the Divine in Harlem, to be memorialized in 1993, with both her name and words of her poetry. And one of the many things she's famous for is that phrase, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And those came from a conference, of a panel, the Second Sex Conference in New York in 1979. And so this is, there's some people I can see in the chat, this is from the late 70s. There's this whole feminist movement. So here's a panel, here's a conference, and all these feminists are there. And they had consulted with Audre and asked for consultations and ended up putting her on the last panel on the last day with the other woman of color. And so rather than shoot herself with a second arrow, she's like, okay, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to transform myself in the moment and say, if this is feminism, it's not doing us any service to marginalize the women of color, to segregate the women of color, to have the queer Black women of color talk about just one little marginal thing on the last panel. Like, we could talk about the other topics that have been through the other days. We could talk about families. We could talk about education. That really what the movement was doing was trying to use the master's tools to take down the master's house. And her argument was like, that's not going to work. But part of why I share in the milieu or in the kind of order of my talk is she really embodies this kind of multiplicity of identities. She's really in touch with her interbeing. Even her title, Black, lesbian, feminist, warrior, poet, is, this multi-hyphenated kind of way of being in the world. And she used her presence and her person that way to illustrate it. She has this one thing, within the interdependence of mutual differences lies that security which enables us to descend into the chaos of knowledge and return with true visions of our future. Difference is that raw and powerful connection from which our personal power is forged. So Audre's really advocating for us as flowers to recognize ourselves and our countless non-flower elements as an antidote to the inferiority, superiority, equality complexes that we have about ourselves in our world. It's what Rima Bisley-Fladd writes about so eloquently in this new book that just came out last week, that as I was getting ready for my talk, I saw this and pre-ordered it. The Fire Inside, the Dharma of James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. And she's got a great thing in there that she writes about when she says, does she have it? Did I write it down? In a section on refusing distortions. She writes, so when the other side suffers, oh, wait, is that right? No, excuse me. Oh, she writes, those who are oppressed must acknowledge, indeed, use different aspects of their experience and identify in the service of political and cultural liberation. So I think it's not just political and cultural liberation. I think it's spiritual liberation too. That the more aware we are of our interconnectedness and to all things, to know things, we become empty and open to infinite possibilities. And I've always kind of thought like that's one of the ironies of white supremacist ideology. Like it's always a dichotomy. It's always white, black, good, bad, heaven, hell. You know, part of my interest in the more recent movements around decolonization and decolonizing struggles is around like the demystification of hierarchies and dichotomies. And it makes me think of the story. I actually, for my oldest kid, I have spent from his preschool to fifth grade, I spent the entirety of his Friday in his classroom, the whole day. My second kid, I'm older now, I do it half a day. But my old kid, I spend the whole day in his classroom. And so one day in second grade, he had this incredible teacher who says, okay, kids, today we're going to learn about gender. So she reads this book about this kid who's transitioning. And part of the story involves the school changing their bathrooms to non-gender oriented bathrooms. And so I'm sitting in the classroom, I'm like, this is not my second grade. This is not what I was learning in second grade. Big up to Berkeley. Okay, this is 16 years ago. And so I'm sitting in the classroom and the teacher says, okay, kids, draws a dot on the paper behind her. She's like, this is being a boy. What's it mean to be a boy? And everyone's like, okay, it's this, and this. She draws another dot. All right, this is girl. What are girl things? And so the kids are like, yeah, this is girl things, girl things. And then she's like, but really, like, aren't there boys that like girl stuff? Or have girl things? Or act girl kind of ways? Or aren't there girls that like identify as boys, do boy stuff? Do boy kind of things? And so she's like, she draws a line between the dots. It's like, this is gender. It's not a dichotomy. It's all these different kind of places on the number line. So she's working geography, she's doing mathematics in there, cultural consciousness, cultural strategy, like amazing teacher. But such a deep Dharma lesson on interconnectedness, on not being a separate self. When I think of myself thinking of American institutions, I often think of them as white Christian capitalist patriarchy. That's how the great writer Bell Hooks has kind of like identified these traditional frames for these systems. And I think one of the hardest things for us as Americans is to see ourselves in Black, non-Christian, natural, queer women like Audre Lorde. We just never have that practice of seeing ourselves that way. So for me, reading, writing, listening to stories, and making art about Audre Lorde as a cis man is part of recognizing my difference and seeing myself in her. The karma of my deep looking becomes an instrument to simultaneously help me see my interconnectedness with Audre and make Audre more seen in the world. And so that brings me to Greg Tate. We're coming to the bend now, coming around the last turn. And so Greg Tate is another historical figure. This is a gentleman who went to school in DC, but moved to Harlem and started writing for the Village Voice in the early 80s. And I met him when I was in Harlem. And he, with Conda Mason, who some of you may know as a Dharma teacher, and this guy, Vernon Reed, started this thing called the Black Rock Coalition. So before 83, when there was black music, it was always kind of essentialized as like R&B. And so there was no place for progressive music, black punk music, rock and roll music, alternative music. It couldn't be played on the radio. It just didn't exist. And so the Black Rock Coalition were these assemblage of individuals that started advocating for more spaces. And so at the same time, he starts writing like all these seminal kind of essays in the Village Voice. And part of what was so profound, besides that he's writing about Jean-Michel Basquiat or Public Enemy or all these things across Black culture, at one moment he's using French theory. At another moment, he's tapping into Black history. At another moment, he's using slang and lexicon from the contemporary moment. At another time, he's referencing Pan-African struggles in Algiers or in South Africa. And so he's a not flat person. Like Audre Lorde, part of my kind of inspiration for him is like he's just this array of people. And so I bring him up because last year I get a notification that the Studio Museum had built a new building. So about 7 years ago, they raised, I think, $380 million and built a new museum. Giant, fancy architect. Took 6 years to build. And so they decide, okay, well, for the opening, we're going to invite all of the residents, all of the artists from the 58 years that it's been going, 167 of us, to do a drawing, small drawing. So I'm like, well, that's a big deal. Better be good. There's going to be a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, it's literally some of the greatest artists to have ever lived have been in that over the past 58 years. And so I start thinking like, well, what am I going to do? Like, who am I going to draw? So I started thinking of the people I drew and things about Harlem. And then finally came to me, I'm going to do Greg. I'm going to do Greg Tate. I'm going to do a drawing of Greg. Because what I didn't fail to mention is, he became this really esteemed kind of critic and essayist and associated with Afrofuturism, taught at Columbia and at Brown. And then in 2021, he died unexpectedly. And then received a Pulitzer posthumously. And so his absence has been a vacuum. Really in that community of art and culture and criticism, he really is the genesis of hip hop journalism. And so all of the writers that have come after him, really all over the world, point to him as an inspiration. And his passing really has just been an unfathomable kind of grief. And so I get the idea, I'm going to do Greg. But then I'm like, but actually, if this was me back in the day, I would put something up outside for free, like I did when I was in residence myself. But now I live in California and I'm not trying to have the thing disappear and just disintegrate. Like, it's going to be nice. It's going to be a cultural artifact. Like, I want to get it back. It can't just disappear. So I decide I'm going to do it one way or another. I'd sold my mom's house. This is supposed to be from hypertension and elder care money. I'm going to take this money and make this thing and find a way to make it. And then I start asking people I know in Harlem, like, is there a place I can put this? And I find out that there's a temporary art program through the Parks Department. I write a proposal and it goes through the process and goes through the borough president and they vet it and take it through the parks president. And eventually in early August, I find out my proposal's approved. And so I make this thing: assistance, materials, fabrication, insurance, art movers, sign hangers, ship it across the country, and time it on his birthday, 2 weeks before the museum opens. And then I start thinking, in the spirit of how Peggy opened this talk, like, how can this be a catalyst for community? What's the karma that I can use to this action to really magnify Greg's greatness? So I contact a friend of his that I knew 20 years ago that does work with Summer Stage and is literate in the parks department, and connect the band Burnt Sugar and the people that he played with. And so eventually organized this event um, where we invited all these people to come. Um, and it was linked with Rock the Vote, and we had a flatbed truck come, and we had poets read his writing. And why not just let Matt show you this short video?
With cool people in cool places, that is the Flux Way. Welcome back to our awesome and amazing series. Today we're in Harlem and we are celebrating Greg Tate, who was a legend in Harlem and inspired so many artists, thinkers, dreamers. And this entire project was spearheaded by Brett Cook, the man of the hour. He was invited by the Studio Museum of Harlem to do this masterpiece, and he absolutely killed it and brought the entire community to celebrate Greg Tate and the influence he had on culture and art in Harlem. And I also had the privilege of interviewing so many awesome people that were so inspired and touched by Greg Tate when he was alive, and everyone encountered such beautiful memories of him. And it was just so beautiful to see everyone come together as Black people celebrating a Black legend and being inspired. And the day ended up with poetry performance in the park, and it was a perfect, awesome day. Bye.
And so it was an incredible day. There are so many people that love Greg. And so the list of celebrities and luminaries that showed up, I mean, yeah, you saw Saul Williams from Sinners in there, the poet, uh, Jason Moran, Elisa Moran, Mark Bamuthi Joseph, VJ Iyer, Captain Kirk from The Roots, Miguel Luciano. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. All for Greg. And it was one of those moments that there was no superiority complex. There was no inferiority complex. There was no quality. It was just love. And so 2 days later, or 2 weeks later, I go back to New York for the museum opening, and they're having an artist only opening. And so it's essentially 400 of the greatest artists on the planet. Literally. Like the greatest artists have gone through or affiliated with this institution. People from the 60s, people from the 70s, people from the 80s, people from the 90s, like me, and the 2000s and the 10s. I'm there talking to kid just got out of Yale. Like, here's this young kid, 20, just got out of Yale, moved to New York. If he can make it there, he can make it anywhere. Like all of these people from Oakland, people from Berkeley, people from Atlanta, people from Chicago, people from Dominican Republic, people from Puerto Rico, people from Nigeria, people from South Africa, people from England, just the whole diaspora, arts workers, artists, just incredible people. And so at some point, Julie Murtu, who, if you don't know her, is a very, very, very famous contemporary artist. Here in San Francisco, she has giant pieces in the entryway of the SF MoMA. And she just did a giant piece for Obama's new library in Chicago. So Julie comes up to me and says, Brett, we're going to tell Thelma. We're going to do a toast for Thelma. And we want you to come give the toast. So I'm like, who did the vetting? Why would I get to be the one after that letter I gave her 25 years ago to be the one to get to give her the toast? But at the same time, I'm like, this is perfect. This is karma. No one else knows about that letter. And so it ends up being Julie, Murtu, myself, Candida Alvarez and Jordan Castile. These are just giants of contemporary art. And here we are with 400 all Black people. That may not matter, but it does. And like, when have you been in a room with 400 Black people? When was the last time, if ever? And they're all from all over the world. And they're all not thinking they're better than or worse than or equal than. They're all like, we're all connected by this place, by this moment, by all of the actions that have happened before, all of the great conditions, all of the great impacts have brought us all to this night and this place in this new building that now is going to have a whole other future. And so we understood the assignment, like everyone's skillful. These are all like professionals. We kept it short, said something eloquent, and kept it moving. But it really was one of those moments that's kind of like, Terrence Nash is a filmmaker who did this thing on HBO, Random Act of Flyness. And it was one of those moments that like, it wasn't Blackness in reference to whiteness. It's like, I have a dream or so many things. There is still this like reference of Blackness to another thing. So oftentimes when we look through Black history, it's like, oh, that's because we have Women's History Month, or, there's still this equality complex. And part of the power of that night is it's not better than, worse than, equal than. It's like, here is this moment of just celebration. We're really, really living our interconnectedness. And just embodying that feeling makes it more easy to remember that as we move into the world. And so it really helped me think of what I'd like to end with is, when I was young in my training, I was taught that being an artist is making great things. Like you make great paintings or you make great poems or choreograph dances. And I think what I've come to realize is being a great artist is how I make my life. So that doesn't mean I'm saying everyone knows how to color. What I'm saying is I've met bankers or I've met chefs or I've met teachers, and the way they think of algorithms or the way they think of the chemistry of flavors or the way they think of curriculum is so creative. And they make what they want to make. They're making their karma, their actions with kindness, with thoughtfulness, expansive, complex, multifaceted, pluralistic, all of those things. And then conversely, I meet people that have danced all over the world, made art all over the world, sing all over the world, and their life's not that creative. They're living in Brooklyn in some little apartment they don't like. They're teaching at some place, a bunch of students they treat badly that they don't want to teach. They're making things that they have to make because it's what makes them money, but it's not what they want to make. Or they're struggling. And so that trope of the artist is like, that's a trope. That's actually not that creative. And so I end with this idea that Black karma matters because it shows that we can make our lives in spite of oppression, in spite of marginalization, or any kind of mud that we've suffered that has been brought to us or that we create ourselves. That we can choose to act with love, and that love then becomes our material as artists. And then we can make an artful life. It's not based on the products that we make. It's based on the process of our creation, of our actions. And with the insight of interbeing, we recognize that we are all things and we are no things all at the same time. Matt, can I have a sound of end on the sound of the bell, please?
Thank you, Brett. It's quite beautiful. I'm really sitting with it all right now and a very full heart. I wonder if how we'd like to bring people in. If you want to use the chat room or if you'd like to take some responses. We always call it question and response. If you have a response or something you'd like to offer to Brett, you want to come on down, you could raise your hand, the artificial one, or put a hand right in front of the screen so we can see you and Matt can help us. But what do you want, Brett?
Yeah, I'm open to all of that. I thank
Okay.
you. And thank you all. I think questions and responses are welcome and appreciated. I'm just so
Okay.
honored to share the space with you all.
Thanks. Thanks. So if you have something you'd like to say or offer, chat or raise your hand. I'm going to put in gallery view. Matt's going to help me out.
Clara, I think I saw a hand from you. I'll bring you up.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. My name is Clara. I'm in my bedroom in Charleston, West Virginia. Um, I'm so pleased to have had this opportunity to share a little bit more with Brett Cook, his uh, experience and life as an artist. And so I thank you so much for that. What I wanted to share with you in this thematic moment of karma is that I'm so moved to hear about your work concerning the people that you knew in Harlem and that you were able to celebrate them. I never knew Vernon Reed nor the gentleman that you did the piece about is named Tate. Is that correct, sir?
Greg Tate. Mhm.
Greg Tate. Okay. Well, to express my own sense of interbeing with you at this moment, I run a jazz uh, uh, music series, and one of the people that I most loved that was invited was a man named Blood, James Blood Ulmer, and he was apparently also part of this brotherhood that you celebrated in your art. So I'm so moved to be able to tell you that I got to be part of Blood's world too. For me, this is so beautiful because I really do feel that this is about something that's much bigger than doing important work or being famous. So that's why I was so moved to hear this from you and to share this with you. Thank you so much. Clara, bowing out.
Thank you.
Oh, Clara, thank you so much for your sharing. Um, it warms my heart to hear your sense of connection. And it's true that um, Burnt Sugar, Greg Tate's band, the mycelia from that organism spread very far and very wide. It's an expansive kind of entity that if there are any people in the jazz world around the world, it's there's only one degree of separation that somehow connects back to Burnt Sugar. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone you work with it someday crosses your path. Thank you for your sharing.
And I can share a couple things in the chat while we have a break from live sharing. Sharon and Omi wrote, "Thank you, Brett. This was such a full offering, expanding for the wide range of people who have attended. You were very generous to me many years ago in San Francisco, and I continue to be inspired by you. And I'm not going to know how to pronounce it, but I'll try Echo ECO. Well done. So that was from Sharon and Omi.
Oh, Sharon and Oni, bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas in their own right. So honored to have had them here today, tonight. Ah, yes. Deep bow to you. Thank you for coming.
Courtney?
Thank you so much. This has been so inspirational, and I loved your whole presentation. I loved your story, your use of story, and your stories from your own personal life. I feel like those are the Dharma talks that I always remember the most. And I loved your perspective on karma in general, and that the way that we, just the way that we choose to live is our karma. The way that we choose to act is our karma. And I just absolutely love the idea of karma as our art. How do we want to choose to be in the world as an art form? And the invitation of thinking about that creatively is really inspirational to me, and is just a new, just a little bit of a different perspective that makes me feel more freedom in how I want to pursue what you're offering. So yeah, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It's been a great, great talk. Thank you so much for the work you do in the world and for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for your synopsis. Chat GPTs has nothing on you. Like, you really just gave us so much of what I had aspired to be received. And I'm so glad that you found some inspiration in the offering. I do think for me, as much as I have read and studied the Dharma, I think my privilege is to have had a pretty extraordinary creative life. And so, in a lot of ways, I think I like to just teach from the sometimes skillful, sometimes less skillful myriad of experiences that I've been through. So thank you for being willing to listen to them. Any other responses?
We probably have time for a few more. And Yao Tunde in the chat. Yao Tunde, if you want to come on mic and share what you said, that's cool. But I'll give it a few breaths and then I can share your words. Yao Tunde said, "Thank you very much for the history. Raising Greg Tate had me remembering Stanley Crouch, Amiri Baraka, and others who are continuing that legacy, like Nelson George, Farah Jasmine Griffin, etc., and Black Rock Coalition. Afrofuturism in full effect. Ain't but a few of us, Black music writers, tell their stories, edited by Willard Jenkins. Much love to all."
Dear Yatunde, thank you so much. I think part of, I think I said this in the beginning, but if this is a Black History Dharma talk, then there's got to be a lot of Black history in it. And in some ways, it is so obscure. It is so not part of people's experience, not part of popular culture. And yet for those of us, it's been so fundamental, foundational, and it warms my heart that I can water those seeds in you who share those same experiences and literacies and appreciations. So glad you got to be here, witness it.
Ao, someone's in the chat that you had something to share. I'll bring you up if that's true.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all, bowing in. Brett, thank you for your presentation. And you were introduced as a cultural something. What was that second word after cultural.
Cultural strategist.
Cultural strategist. So, as a cultural strategist, I'm curious about what your answer is to this question that I've been posing in a variety of ways to many, many Buddhist practitioners in particular. And that question is, now that the Buddhist monks' peace walk has ended, what is our obligation? No, is that the question? Well, what is our obligation to take the impact that they've had on the culture and keep it going? What's the momentum? The strategy? What is the cultural strategy to keep that momentum going, especially in a time of great strife? Thank you. Bowing out.
Thank you so much for your question. Part of what the title cultural strategist means is that I often find myself working inside of systems. So I am sometimes working in academe, in policy, in the nonprofit industrial complex, in organizing, in structures, and systems that maybe aren't built from a Buddhist morality or ethic. And so, what comes up for me in your question is that I often find myself in those settings encouraging the people to be more creative with an acknowledgement of their interconnectedness as leaders, as directors, as trustees, as staff members. And if anything, I think the Peace Walk just helps validate the authentic compassion and caring that we as practitioners bring with us to the conditions that we're in. You know, I think on the one hand, I'm not a big believer in institutions. Like, we can't even get rid of the electoral college, like the Supreme Court. Like, those systems aren't really functional right now in our country. And yet, all institutions are made of people. And so, to the degree that we can transform ourselves as individuals, is part of the degree to which we transform institutions. And so, part of my excitement around the Peace Walk is not that it's the first. I mean, my teacher, Ty, has been walking and around nuclear disarmament and before. And so it's a strategy that is not new. But my hope is that with this new popularity, there's a receptivity to more people to see its value, and hopefully for me, a nourishment to keep going, an add of hopefulness in a climate and a time of so much suffering and collapse. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for your question.
Peggy, maybe I'll bring you up and we'll close.
Yeah, keep Brett up. Okay, good. Good. Well, Brett, I have a lot to digest. I think we all do. I really appreciated seeing the young Brett painting on walls in Harlem, and hey, looks like what was that? Oh, Bill Cosby. It must be Bill Cosby. Yeah, but thank you so much for your scholarship, your presence, and your practice. And is there any closing prayer or offering that you'd like to make as we extend this out in the world? Final words, prayer.
Just any reflection of inspiration or greatness that you might have received in this talk is really a reflection of the greatness and inspiration in yourselves. And may we all combine through our interconnectedness that inspiration to create a world filled with Peace and joy.